Hello ladies and welcome back to another My Hero Academia review. This is chapter 164 of course, and this week some interesting things happened. Wasn't really hype I guess, but rather a really interesting and good build up to something that could end up being incredibly good, but it could also fail to do so. It depends how things are being executed of course, but what I want to talk about first is of course Cammy. Now Cammy, as we know, she's seemingly back, and last chapters a lot of people were confused whether that was the real Cammy or if it's still Toga. I knew it was the real Cammy even in that chapter because the evidence were right there, but in this chapter we kind of get more insight on that. We learn that Cammy doesn't actually know what happened because she has a foggy memory of that period, so to her it's more like she was being asleep for the whole hero license exam initially, but as we know obviously Toga was somehow able to procure her blood, so she must have done something. Now this is interesting because Toga, as far as we know, she hasn't really spared anyone that she's encountered, but we now learn that she didn't really go into kill Cammy, because if that was the case she would have had a knife wound or something, right? But they didn't really mention anything like a wound. They just mentioned that she was being missing and that she didn't really know what happened. They somehow know it's the League. I assume Deku and Aizawa have kind of been telling about Toga's quirk and that it's definitely been her, but what I find interesting is of course the fact that Toga did spare Cammy willingly. She didn't really attempt to murder her, and I am questioning, what kind method were used in order to make Cammy's memory foggy, because that's not Toga's quirk at all, and the League did not send Toga to the hero license exam originally. It was openly stated that Shigaraki was not in on it, because Toga, when talking to Shigaraki on the phone, she says that she just wanted to have some fun, meaning that she did it on her own accord. So I'm guessing it's probably some kind of a drug or something. Has to be a very sneaky drug though, because otherwise they would have obviously mentioned that there was a drug involved, but they didn't really seem to think that there was a drug, meaning that either Toga had help by someone else in the League that also weren't really on duty at the time with the League, and that is how she may have been able to, I guess, put Cammy to sleep or make her memories foggy, as she says. But there's a lot of other things in this chapter that I want to talk about, one of course being Endeavor and All Might. Now this is of course at the very end of the chapter, so this review is not really going to be chronological by any means, but Endeavor said at the end of the chapter that he wanted All Might's advice on how to be the symbol of peace. Now this is something that I found to be absolutely incredible, because so far Endeavor has been quite an asshole, he's been all about power. For the most part it's been to catch up to All Might, but now that All Might hasn't really been able to do hero work, obviously Endeavor doesn't really need to meet his abilities anymore. He needs to be himself. He needs to learn how to be the symbol of peace, in the right way, in the same way that All Might was able to do it, so that people will look up to him, because Endeavor right now, he's looked up to because he's the #1 hero, but he's not really considered the symbol of peace by any means. And it's gonna be interesting to see just how All Might tackles this question. What is he going to be telling Endeavor in order for Endeavor to be able to grow as a symbol of peace, I suppose, because until someone surpasses Endeavor, he's going to have to be able to at least try and become the symbol of peace until someone else takes his place as the #1 hero. Then we have of course the fact that Gang Orca is back. Yes guys, Gang Orca has returned. He's gonna lecture these motherfuckers how to become heroes, and guess what? I love Gang Orca. He's incredible. His quirk is fucking, I don't know how to describe it. It's just amazing. And the way he talks to these kids, well, these students, it's very, I guess, patronizing. He tries to really lecture them in a way, because we do see these panels where he's just trying to put guidance on them in this really comedic way, of course. And this exam, I'm not sure if it's gonna be directly tied to Gang Orca, to be honest, because it's gonna be more about babysitting, which I'll get to in a second. But what I found interesting specifically between Inasa and Todoroki is that they try and mend a relationship with each other, I suppose. Well, at least Inasa is. He wants to be friends with Todoroki. Todoroki doesn't really have the same level of interest in being friends, like at the very beginning of the chapter. Inasa is just starting some small talk like, oh, what's your favorite food? And it goes on from there, but Todoroki doesn't really seem like he wants to be friends with Inasa. He doesn't mind the idea of being friends with Inasa, but he doesn't really think think it's the right thing to do at this time. I guess he wants to focus on other things, you know, as a priority. I mean, if they end up becoming friends, then they do along the way, but that's not really what he wants to put his focus on, especially not in this hero license exam where he wants to make sure that he passes and gets his provisional hero license. Okay, so back to the Todoroki, Bakugo, Inaz and Kami thing with the babysitting, because we see this group of children just storming the place. You know, this is going to be their new exam. They're going to babysit or nanny these children, and it is a lot harder than it sounds because these children are no pushovers. You know, I just remember seeing this, especially this one kid with Bakugo. He was like, yo, bad mouthing may work against these kids, but not against me, man, not against me. And Bakugo already has a nemesis, a child of maybe what, 4 or 5 years old. So it's gonna be a bit like Deku and Kota, I think. It's going to be the fact that this kid is going to have something against Bakugo. Bakugo is going to have something against him. Obviously, Kota didn't really have anything against Deku, but you know what I mean. And as time passes, they're gonna grow on each other. I'm not really sure how this exam is going to play out exactly, but we do know that they're going to somehow make these children behave better. That's kind of the point of this exam, I think, because the kindergarten teacher or whatever of these children talks to Gang Orca, I think, and Gang Orca just tells them that, you know, after these students are done with these children, they're gonna be nice as puppies. So I'm honestly really curious to see just what kind of route this exam is going to be taking with these children, because we have, obviously, like I said, Bakugo and this kid. They're basically nemesis with each other. Bakugo likes bad-mouthing you in order to get his way, right? I mean, especially with children, he can't really attack them. But then we have Todoroki. Now, he's not really in Bakugo's shoes, but these children, they're just clinging on to him, you know. They're so curious about his equipment and whatnot, and when they realize what it is, they're really disappointed, calls it lame and all of this. So, and the same goes for the other two. Like, I know Kami, she had some sort of seduction issue, you know. The female children thought that she was seducing this kid when he was crying or something. So, naturally, they all have issues they need to work on in this exam. They need to overcome some obstacles. And I'm really, really hyped to see just how they're going to be doing that, because when you look at it from a development side of things, they all have room to grow here, like especially Bakugo, especially Bakugo, because he's not really your children type. I remember in the anime, and I'm going to touch on filler topic a bit here, but it is basically green lighted by Horikoshi, so I'm gonna let it slide, you know. He was meeting a couple of kids in the street and he was doing that exact thing. He was bad-mouthing them, and you know, Best Genius was telling him you can't really do that. So that kind of ties into this. I guess this is gonna be more of a development on that. He's gonna have to learn how to behave around children, because not everybody is going to just accept your help on first glance. That's not really how hero works. I mean, sometimes, you know, if they're in a pinch, they might take help from a hero who's trying to help them, but maybe they won't. And if they don't, Bakugo, Todoroki, Kami, and Inaz are gonna have to find out, how do I make them listen to me? How do I persuade them that I'm actually here to help and that I'm a good guy, not a bad guy? So I'm mostly looking forward to Bakugo's character development. That is a biased thing because I really like Bakugo. I also want to know what Kami's actual quirk is, because I don't think we know that yet. So that would be really interesting to find out, but that's not really going to be that relevant in this exam, I think, because this is mostly just going to be them teaching children how to behave or getting the children to listen to them. You know, they need to become friends or acquainted with these kids. But yeah, that's really all I had to say about this chapter. I'd love to know what you think about this chapter in the comments down below, and as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. This has been your favorite host, Perm, and I will see you next time.